Hi there, Syed. So welcome to your first essay corrections. As you know, what happens with these is I read through sentence by sentence and let you know just exactly how you're performing in the 4 areas. Now, that we don't tend to comment that much on coherence and cohesion in these feedback videos because the acronym and the course material gives you a detailed guide of how to produce an essay that flows properly in the correct order, that's fully expanded and supported. So really, the course content takes care of most of the 4 areas. What we need to work on is making sure that the sentences contain enough detail, that they are precisely expressed, and that we have enough formal vocabulary behind them to make them effective. And also we'll be correcting the grammar to make sure that we can solve as many of those mistakes as possible. Each time that I send you a set of essays, apply the corrections yourself, compile a list of errors that you made most frequently before attempting the new tasks. And then in every subsequent email, send me your new tasks, your error lists, and your old corrected tasks for maximum benefit. So let's have a look. It is undeniable that reading has a large number of advantages. However, playful activities with children yield better results. I would talk specifically here about for the development of skills and creative thinking, or skills and imagination, but we need to make sure that we keep this topic of skills and creative thinking in the essay introduction. I will give real-life examples to demonstrate points and prove. We could either say improve arguments, because this is kind of repetitive. Demonstrate points, prove arguments. So we could say demonstrate points and prove my argument, or argue my point. There are a few different ways we could say this, and in future corrections I'll also go over how we can make this outline sentence more detailed and more valuable. But you do have your thesis statement. I completely agree with this opinion. But the problem here is that you say I completely agree with this opinion, but you do state the opinion as if it is yours. That would be a more accurate introduction. Because if you're saying that you agree with the opinion, you need to show that it's somebody else's opinion, or at least an opinion external to you, so that you can then say, oh, but this is somebody else's thought, but I agree with it. I wouldn't constantly say this unless you're going to talk about the benefits that reading has and how the alternatives can develop them better. I would just leave this out. For me, this just seems like an excuse to use the word nonetheless. But we should use like fancy words like nonetheless, notwithstanding. We should only use when they are really necessary. So we've got the singular indefinite article there, so this is not plural. Playing on a video game console can develop skills that will be impossible to develop just by reading alone. I don't think we need both of the just and alone. By reading alone, I think is more of a formal expression. This is because by playing on these consoles, children can develop spatial, reflexive, and cognitive skills. Let's say can enhance there because we've already talked about developing several times. Past tense, recent studies showed or have shown that children, I would say, who play 2 hours on video games such as the Sony PlayStation and Panasonic Q. Is that a games console or a television? Actually, we could use these. Outperformed their counterparts by 20% in psychometric tests. Therefore, the advantages of playing on consoles are clear and give increased opportunities to a child to progress in areas neglected by just reading. Okay, yeah, so now we've said it in 2 different ways. Reading alone, just reading. Just trying to, so the coherence and cohesion of this sentence is a little bit off. It doesn't quite make sense. So you're saying that secondly, reading alone may bestow an academic bias Okay, so that's not these sentences don't follow. Remember that the first sentence of a paragraph is supposed to be the topic sentence, so this is supposed to tell us what the rest of the paragraph is about. But reading alone may bestow an academic bias on young people's skill sets. Talks about the young people's skill sets and how reading could introduce an academic bias. But then you go straight on to talk about physical activity. Yeah, so this topic sentence is not related to the rest of this sentence. Team sports mitigate the risk of an academic bias being introduced into young people's skill sets by reading alone. Let's say team sports may mitigate the risk of an academic bias being introduced into young people's skill sets by reading alone. This needs more expansion, but competition's good. I would also use teamwork, rapid problem solving. There's loads of stuff we could talk about. Oh, so what you're trying to say is, because, right, the reason I misunderstood this is because academic bias means that the focus is unduly placed on academics, so books and such. What we really need to talk about is that sports augment their ability, their academic ability. wouldn't say extraordinary, I would quantify it. So they perform consistently better in academics, unlike others who are not involved in such activities. Hence, sports are crucial, not mandatory. Mandatory means it's enforced by somebody else. Cognitive, physical, and mental health. Okay, my one thing that we don't seem to really have drilled down into in this essay is the idea of imagination. We need to make sure that we tackle the question as specifically as possible. These paragraphs are quite general, so we really should have talked about how an activity could improve some skills better than reading can, and how an activity participating in enjoyable activities with children could better develop their imagination. Skills and imagination. So this is how we would have structured this essay. Your writing's really clear. You've followed the structure. You are achieving almost all of the requirements for the Band 7. But we need to make sure that the paragraphs are a little bit more focused on exactly what the question asked. I wouldn't say joyful activities. I would talk about like more engaging activities. So you do mention imagination here, but you don't really discuss it down here. Up here, sorry. Skill set. We could just say these skills cool. Overall, this is a really good first essay. Your writing's really clear, your grammar's good, you have a decent access to vocabulary, but we just need to make sure it's more focused on the question, more that each paragraph is focused on a very specific idea, and that idea comes from the question. But let's have a look at your second piece. So once again, you state this opinion as if it belongs to you, but then say, I completely agree with it. So it's like you're agreeing with yourself. The advent of internet technology has unprecedentedly changed the way we communicate with each other. This has also brought a large communication gap between family members. Don't personalize it too much. This has also brought a larger communication gap between families than ever before. So what I'm going to do so actually what we could do is just say, and some people opine that this has widened the communication gap between relatives. Okay. Okay, so I would say here that we don't need to keep reinforcing the idea that this is your view. This is just now too many words. So we could actually just say here, the increased use of smart devices nowadays, rather than just saying played a significant role, which is really general, we could say that it has detracted the available time for meaningful, familial interaction. This is because people spend more time on social media websites, such as Facebook, Twitter, and Skype, than they do communicating with their family members. Oops. A recent survey by Facebook has indicated that an average teenager spends 30 hours a week on social media, and resultantly, his or her family is spared little time for discussion. So now I would say that this is missing a final sentence to explain how it relates back to the question. We could say something like, while these family members may communicate via instant message, intimate face-to-face conversation is still actually remains low. Now we have this sort of slightly alternative perspective on a fully developed paragraph. What we could say here, furthermore, inflation don't think we need this one. I think we can just say inflation or okay, so let's change this. Inflation has continued to increase and a single person's income is insufficient for most people's daily needs. As a result, we wouldn't say housewives, because they could be men. More people are entering the workplace who would previously have remained at home. Especially in Western countries, I would just say, especially in Western countries, where this is considered quite normal. Let's say today, because we've already used nowadays up there. So as a result, more people are entering the workplace who would previously have remained at home, especially in Western countries where this is considered quite normal today. Maybe we don't need that. No, we do. This modern and growing trend is also coming to Eastern countries such as India, Pakistan and Bangladesh. Let's say, for instance, there, just to make it clear that we're giving an example, compared to a more traditional model of the past, this relatively new concept is a clear example of the reduced time spent conversing with family. Let's say the average person spends. To conclude, both technological and demographic factors, nice, have played significant roles. We would really say they've played significant roles in exacerbating. We play a role in things, and then we need the gerund instead of. So, just in future, if you want to use played significant role, always follow it with in, and then use the gerund. Played a significant role in exacerbating the communication gap between family members. These two factors are the main culprits for the reduction a reduction in things. So again, these two factors are the main culprits behind the reduction in, we can just say, familial communication. This trend will most likely continue as more and more people are adopting Western culture. Cool. So actually both of those essays were really good. This one did need an additional sentence on here. But one thing that you'll get used to throughout these corrections is this building up of detail, making sure that we specifically respond to every part of the question and that we expand every point fully, support it with an example, and that we are agreeing with an external opinion and not our own. So it's really important that we make it clear in our introduction that this opinion already exists. This opinion has been said before. It is not something we are originally coming up with. The opinion is presented in the question, and then we must state whether we agree or disagree with it. Don't just try to take the opinion as yours. Always start with, some people believe this. I personally think this. But I'll send these over to you now. I look forward to your next pieces. Have a great day, Syed, and I'll speak to you again very soon.